First on the agenda this evening is reports and discussion. First up, LD 1127.
Put it on there because I wasn't sure if the discussion was over, so, and I know we had an email from Bruce about the work session, so I don't know if we want to discuss that further.
I think an update would be great.
Yes.
And maybe we can see that if you like. So, Bruce gave an update that the LD 1127 has had its work session scheduled for May 8th at 1 p.m. Bruce has asked that, or Bruce has been encouraged actually not to have a large crowd at these work sessions. There's not a lot of opportunity for input from the crowd, from the public. And usually they just ask for some clarification from somebody from the group, a representative. And Bruce has suggested that Chuck Cunningham be that representative, and I would second that. And he said, but there is a way that everyone can have an effect on the outcome of the bill. And he said an effective lobbying campaign can be launched, and you can contact the senators or representatives on the committee. It's the state and local government committee. And write either a letter or an email or give them a call or see them in person, and simply state that you support LD 1127 and, you know, keep it simple and to the point. He encouraged people to be concise and just voice your support for the bill, and that numbers do make a difference in this kind of a case. So the number of contacts that a senator or a representative receives is positive. And he also reminded us all to thank them for their work. He had a link to the committee members, and I wrote an email with all of their email addresses. I sent that to several people, and if you'd like the list of the email addresses, please feel free to see me afterwards, and I can email it to you. I think that's it.
Can you repeat the title of that committee again?
It's the State and Local Government Committee.
How many people are on that?
It's about 10 or 12, yeah. It's about 10 or 12. I think that's about it.
I would say I'd encourage people to send in their thoughts to the
Absolutely.
senators and representatives so that they hear your voices.
Valerie, I noticed that you left out something that Bruce said in his email, and if you don't want to say it, I'll be happy to. But he asked specifically, or suggested, in big capital letters, do not go on at great length or engage in negative comments about Lincoln County health. This will hurt rather than help. He just says, talk about the bill, ask for the right to vote for this district, and just keep it simple and to the point, and that will serve us better.
Would one copy end up going to all of them? Or do we have to do like we did when we went up 25 copies?
I wrote a separate email to each of the representatives and senators.
I don't have email, so it would have to be in letter form.
There's a mailing address, Committee on State and Local Government, care of the Legislative Information, 100 State House Stations, Augusta, Maine, 04323. I can make sure that that's available for everybody here at the town office. Pretty good. 13 members on the, yeah.
So do we have to send 13 copies of our letter?
If you send a letter to the committee,
They will copy it and send it around. Okay, that's what I need to.
and if anybody intends to email, I would email the committee clerk. Email them to the committee clerk.
rather than one to every
Right.
one of the ones that,
He,
Did he specify?
I think he suggested doing it directly to each one.
when I submitted additional testimony after we went to Augusta, I sent it, rather than the clerk, I sent it to each of the representatives, and I got some responses from some of the representatives. Yeah.
And I sent, yeah, I sent mine to the clerk and did not get a response, so.
What I did. So, I don't know, you know, that was my experience before.
Okay.
Yeah, Bruce is probably correct in sending it to all the representatives, especially if you're doing it via email, it's a little easier. If you're gonna mail them a
If you're
letter,
going to just mail one.
I don't see the necessity in sending 13 letters to the same address.
Alan?
Can you give us a brief description of what that LD 1127 is?
Do you have that?
Yes. I don't have it in front of me, obviously.
Yes, it's
Go ahead.
an act to establish Hospital Administrative District Number 5, a regional hospital administrative district in Lincoln County. That's the full title.
And what it would do, Alan, it would come before Booth Bay Harbor, Southport, Edgecombe, all would have to vote on it. Booth Bay Harbor, and one, either Southport or Edgecombe would have to pass it by a 2/3 vote in those towns for that to become official. So it's a pretty high standard that have to be met.
That's 2/3 of the number of people who voted in the last
Right.
presidential election.
Yeah.
Sad to believe that wouldn't pass, you know.
Well, all I'm saying, it is a fairly high standard to me, not that it couldn't be done, not that it wouldn't be done, but it's not simple majority. You've got to have 2/3 of, as Margaret said, you know.
Get out and vote, right?
Yeah.
I think we have a good idea on how the vote would go once the next 3 town meetings go through.
Yeah,
Southport spoke loud and
they
clear.
did speak fairly loudly, fairly clearly.
I think it's very important to mention that the hospital administrative district and the bill, the whole thing that's in train here, does not include any legal obligation on the part of any of the towns to provide any money for it.
Absolutely.
This is in contrast to what had earlier been discussed, and it's in contrast to what has existed, for example, at Dover Foxcroft. And it's one of the things that has been focused upon by some people as being usurpation of the rights of the towns. And it's very important to understand that there is no such obligation.
Anyone else? All right. Next, we have discussion on town meeting. I know folks have been working on the get out the vote. And Jim, do you have an update?
What I wanted to make sure that we covered one last time, because we talked about, the meeting dates. So I just wanted to be clear that your opportunity to vote in Booth Bay Harbor on the issue of the hospital referendum is Friday, correct?
Friday.
Friday.
And the polls are open 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. to 6 p.m.
6 p.m.
Opportunity for Booth Bay residents to vote is going to be Monday, Monday the 6th, in the same hours, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. The town meeting is later at 7:30 at the Railway Village. But if you're going to vote on the topic for the critical access hospital, that's at the polls. And then Stuart's not here, but they're going to be voting at their open floor town meeting, which is on the 11th. And I'm not sure the time of that. I was hoping that Stuart was going to be here for that, but it's on the 11th. So if you're a resident, look to see what time that is.
It's on the website.
Is it? You can find out more information.
How
It's a big one.
What's that?
When you go on the website, there's a blog. It's
Okay.
also on the Edgecombe site.
Rhoda?
What exactly is meant by critical care, critical access hospital? Is that the same as what we really want, which is full-time emergency?
The critical access hospital designation is a Medicare designation, and it allows the hospital in rural areas to collect, I think it's 103% of what it actually costs. 101, thank you, Margaret.
Yeah.
101% of the actual cost of the care, which gives rural hospitals a chance to compete
No, I
against
understand
the
that,
bigger
but
ones.
isn't it whether they can have a 24-hour emergency room that makes the difference rather than critical care?
In order for a hospital to be a hospital, they need to have a 24/7 emergency room. And if they don't have it, then.
So that phrase covers it. Thank you.
Right. Margaret?
You know, in view of the recent suggestion by Lincoln County Health that they were going to be changing their structure in some way to end up, keep the critical access designation, but have the emergency room at Miles, you know, the thing that was in the paper recently. Some of us sat down and we asked the question, what does a yes vote actually mean? And what the yes vote actually means is, we want our hospital not to change.
Right.
We want an emergency room, we want swing beds, and we want ambulance accessibility at St. Andrew's Hospital. That's what a yes vote means.
But that's not what the vote says, is it?
It says it says that I want to keep a
Critical access hospital
at
designation.
St. Andrew's
at St.
Hospital.
Andrews.
Thank you.
And a critical access, it's,
Got it.
you need to word it better.
Do you favor supporting maintenance of a critical access hospital at St. Andrew's Hospital? That's the question as it appears.
A hospital must have an ER.
What's that?
A hospital must have an ER.
Exactly.
Yes,
And it
so
must
that's clear.
have swing beds and it must, you know.
Well, it must stay as it is, that's the
Yes.
point, and that's exactly what this question entails and what it focuses on, is that we want St. Andrews to remain a hospital, not an urgent care facility, not, you know, whatever else they might want to turn it into, you know, a veterinary hospital or whatever. We want to keep it as a hospital, period. And that's our goal.
The Edgecombe town meeting is May 11th at 10 a.m.
How has the volunteer effort been for the get out to vote?
Pam isn't here, is she?
Yep,
Yes, she
Pam
is.
is right there.
She came anyway.
Good
I'm gonna
girl.
spread my germs to everyone. Everybody, thank you. Everybody has their envelopes with their names and numbers on it, so they should be calling. I gave them out to the people, you know, Booth Bay Harbor's first and said that is the 3rd, you gotta get this out. Ours is the 6th in Booth Bay, and the 11th. The 11th, I think Stuart and I are gonna take care of it. So they've got it. I can't call everybody every day to say, are you calling? We're hoping.
Thanks, Pam.
Yep.
Anything else on town meeting? All right. Next, the community hospital work group. Dan?
Well, we are working to continue to organize the foundation and to transition, you know, the task force into the foundation. And we've developed a set of bylaws, and and these are available to anyone that wants it. If you would like a copy of the bylaws, you know, see Margaret, and she'll provide them for you. We're forming a pro tem board of directors, which will be in effect until the first annual Directors meeting, which will be an open meeting and will be sometime during the summer. The Board of Directors will serve as on a pro tem basis until that meeting. The Board of Directors will be meeting a week from tonight right here for the purpose of coming up with a pro tem slate of officers and what have you. So that'll be here next Tuesday night at 7 p.m. And, you know, again, thanks to Pam, the efforts to, you know, get out the vote are underway. You know, a guy hung up on me today.
Oh, yeah, no.
But anyway, it's,
Anyone have any questions for Dan? Val?
Will the board meeting next Tuesday be open to the public? And
no, that's a private meeting. It's an organizational meeting.
And what time are you doing that?
7 o'clock.
We didn't, I don't know, did somebody schedule it?
And that's gonna be here,
Yes.
which is where we were gonna be meeting too.
You won't be meeting next week, right?
What's that?
You won't be meeting next week. The task force would be meeting next week. Every
No,
other
it's,
week.
yeah, this is an extra meeting, because our next scheduled meeting is gonna be the 7th. It might be our last one, but that's when it's scheduled, so. Perhaps we can meet a little earlier, maybe we can meet at 6 and we can have the passing of the torch, but it'll all work out quite nicely.
That sounds good.
Okay, well, we're flexible in our timing. You know.
Yeah.
We could meet
I
at
thought
6.
we could meet at 6.
We can meet at 6 and have a regular task force with everybody.
Well, I can't meet at 6.
Oh,
That's because Shirley has the car.
That, you got it.
can we pick you up?
We can pick you up.
Okay.
Who are the pro tem directors, or is that not a good question to ask them?
Dan?
I suppose
Do you have a list of who your pro tem directors are at this point?
Yeah, I do. So far, we've got some that we're waiting on. Let's see if I can find it in here. Okay. Those that have signed on so far to my record are Chuck Cunningham, Stuart Smith, me, Margaret, Jane Good, Sandra Rumry, Patty Sebo, Ted Schmidt, Alice Grant, and Mary Connell.
Judy Stone.
And Judy Stone.
Judy Stone.
And I think I got a yes from Valerie this afternoon.
Okay, so Valerie.
And I'm still working on Smith.
Well, you got a yes from me too. Say it
Oh,
now.
listen to that, well, worked it.
Well, it's my wife's finding out over the television as we speak.
Thank you. Thank you. Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Tom?
I'd like to say something about the governance of any not-for-profit, including the foundation, but also any not-for-profit. It's something that I've spent some time investigating, and there's still a lot of misinformation and confusion on the subject, including, by the way, on the part of some of the people up in on this LD11, on the state and local government committee up in Augusta. And the way it works is that there is a board of, first of all, the state authorizes the corporation, and it's a not-for-profit corporation. That corporation has an organization meeting at which the pro tem board of trustees is elected. In successive years or in time after that, the board, the trustees are elected by, quote, members of the corporation. And the thing that's specific about the members of the corporation is that normally, in the great majority of not-for-profits, they're simply appointed by the board of trustees. And typically, they're people who give money to the not-for-profit. But one of the things that has been discussed, I hear from Patty, with respect to the foundation, is who should be allowed to be a member of the corporation. And the objective in the long term is to make that corporation be membership in the corporation that elects the board of trustees, be anybody that is on the peninsula. It's in the area. And that's a fundamental difference from what exists today. What exists today with respect to the hospital is that there is one member of the corporation, of St. Andrews Corporation. St. Andrews is such a corporation at the present time. There is one such member of the corporation. That member of the corporation, which by the way appoints or elects or whatever you want to call it, all the trustees, is Lincoln County Healthcare, which is in turn a not-for-profit which has a corporation that elects its board of trustees, same board by the way, I mean the same people. But that Lincoln County Healthcare similarly has one member of its corporation, and that member is Maine Health. So the difference is the question of who elects the board of trustees.
And I would assume that in the future it'd be whatever citizens show up at the board meeting to.
No, at the annual meeting.
The annual meeting.
Yeah.
This is in our bylaws. Now, I didn't bring a copy of the bylaws with me, but anybody who wants one, I just happen to have it on my computer, which is why they say call Margaret. Anyway, so I can email it to anybody that wants it. But what we did when we wrote the bylaws was that we were going for transparency. We were going for creating an entity that could include. There's a copy. Is that the bylaws? Is that the one that had? We did amend them at our meeting, so that may not be the amended one.
No.
I think that was the working
Just
copy.
have it
Anyway.
written in.
We'll have one annual meeting at which the directors are elected, and anyone can be nominated from the floor. You know, it's open. And then we will have working groups within the corporation that will work all year long. And we'll keep the members apprised of what's going on through. The easiest thing to do is to submit an article to the register, rather than trying to maintain a newsletter and you get distracted by all of that. So anyway, we're trying to keep it open and available to anybody who wants to be involved in the work we're doing.
Commendable.
Talk to me.
Believe it or not, my dear, it's almost been a year already.
I know.
Wow. Any other questions? Murray?
Can I backtrack a little bit? In order to have our emergency room open 24/7, do we have to be a critical care, critical access? Do we have to have a license or something that says we can be open 24/7? Is there something hinging on?
In order to be a hospital, to be a licensed hospital, you need to have a 24/7 ER.
Okay, that's what it is. Very good. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else? All right. Volunteer coordinator.
I'm not sure if we have anything to report, but if anybody's working on any volunteer fronts, this would be the night and time we want to report that activity.
I have a question on this part.
Fire away.
Jean, what's the status of the letters to the Attorney General? Are we still sending them?
Yes.
Okay.
Mike Pander's taking 300 up with him the next time he goes to the Attorney General's office. And
we haven't heard that they want us to stop, so we continue to collect them from the businesses. And I hope with the summer folks coming back that we'll be conscious of our neighbors and friends that could sign some. And I think there's a letter up online from somebody from Connecticut in favor
Yes.
of the hospital. So we're feeling a little energy from our summer folks now. So keep that in mind with the Attorney General's letter. I think that would be helpful for her to see and to continue to write the stories on the bottom because they're being read. So
With the first 300, how many is that?
1,100,
House.
1,100, 1,100 today. I'm going for 2,000, so we gotta just shoot high, we'll get there.
Did I catch you say, they want you to stop sending them?
No,
they have an option.
until they say they don't stop.
Okay,
I think they want to continue to,
okay.
they will continue to receive them. Until I get that word that they've seen enough or had enough and they get the point, then we're just going. And people can pick up the letters and mail them in themselves also.
Absolutely.
Where do you drop them off if you drop them?
Right here in the lobby, or any business in town that has a red heart that says Save St. Andrews, they pass out the letters and they also collect them in the envelopes for us. They're doing a terrific job. So any business that has the red heart, and right here in the lobby, there's a big box for letters and an envelope to put the signed copies in. And I really appreciate everybody's help on this. You've been tremendous. That's pretty amazing, I think, so.
I got a letter from Alice Minto that said that she is no longer going to do the thank you letters and the donation boxes. And I just wanted to express our gratitude. I don't know if anybody knows what she's been doing, but she's been doing handwritten letters to everybody that's donated to the task force in the segregated fund. I'm not sure.
The second thing about it has been created.
But some of the donations to the task force, which we've collected a lot of money, some of them have been $5, you know. So everybody's got a handwritten letter, and that's really impressive. So big thank you to Alice for everything she did do.
Yes. Are there donations that have been given that haven't received an acknowledgement?
She said that they were up to date through 4/21, so.
And we haven't received anything?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I guess it's in the boxes.
Yeah.
There's something on 422 for 128, what is that box?
I have to look to see what that is. It might have been a box.
It looks like a box. Alright. So does that mean that we need somebody to take over collecting the boxes in the businesses?
Well, if we're wrapping up, somebody will have to collect the boxes. And then the boxes are easy weird because we don't necessarily have to write thank you notes to those. But the boxes do need to be rounded up and something figured out. But I think the Wellness Foundation has some ambitions on the donation boxes. Is that correct, or you're not? Are you prepared to
At this
discuss?
point, I think what we would like to do, and there are just some of us that are not, we don't have day jobs. With the exception of, so we would volunteer, be happy to go around and pick them all up, make sure that they are empty, and the foundation may be going after grants and that sort of thing for a while. So we have not really put together an ongoing fundraising thing that would involve boxes in the community right now. But we'd be happy, the working group said, we'd be happy to go pick them up.
If I can suggest, there's already confusion in town about the task force wrapping up, and are we going to exist anymore? And it's very, very unclear to the public that the task force is going to morph into just a new name. It's still us, it's still people in this room. I suggest that those collection boxes in the stores are part of our store window. I suggest that we leave them there. Thousands of people see those in the course of a day. It's free advertising for not a lot of work. They see the red heart, they identify with the red heart, they see the red heart out here, they see it on our bumpers. I suggest that it's free advertising. In fact, I suggest we never remove them. Go empty them, close out the task force books, leave them there with a new name. People know the task force name it's a branding thing. Branding has value. Our brand now is the task force. That's what people know. So, again, I suggest we leave the boxes there, put a new name on them, put task force in parentheses if you want. But again, it's free advertising. And it's free money. And it makes people feel good. They drop in a buck, they drop in whatever they drop in. People feel like they're participating. The more cohesive we can remain, far better off this group will be. We're just starting to see summer people. I can't wait to see the participation and the increased vigor once the summer people get here. I've spoken to some summer people who've just come back and they're ready. I mean, what are you doing? I want to be involved. So that's my suggestion.
And I think most of the boxes say Save St. Andrews, right? And the task force has not trademarked that phrase, so.
No.
Yeah.
And that's, the mission is being handled, so.
And exactly right, exactly the point, that this really is just a passing of the torch. It's not the end of the race by any stretch. We're just handing the torch off to the next runner, you know, and we're gonna go on from there. I think that's the better analogy.
So
to
we
use.
encourage people to keep donating into the boxes they see.
Well, I certainly, as it appears I'm about to be on the pro tem board of Boothbay Region now, yes, I would certainly encourage people to continue to do that. Since I now see them taking off this hat, putting on this other hat.
And if it wasn't revealing that the 4 people that have been the governance of this are going to be the governance of the Health and Wellness Foundation with a lot more people.
Thank you. Part of the governance.
Right.
It's very important that we stipulate that.
So, I mean, if that's not, that ought to start taking shape to people that are wondering what the foundation is going to be. It's a transition. And it's great that the 4 governing members are going to be on it.
I'd like to second that the statement that originally said that we are going to be handing over the torch to an awful lot of people sounded like Lincoln County Health has suborned them. And I think that's got to be straightened out, that it's still us.
Well, I can only speak for myself, but I clearly intended, once we had officially done this, to send a letter to the editor stating my opinion on where we were and what we're doing and where we intend to go. I don't know that,
But the sooner the better.
well, timing is everything, isn't it?
Yeah, because I'm getting sick of hearing people say, oh, it's too late. They're never going to pull this off at this point. And I just think that's stupid, but the more PR we can get out there, the better.
Yeah.
I think it's a little sad that Lincoln County gets the front page of the paper and we get almost the last page of the last section for anything you folks write.
Yeah, but it's next to the crossword puzzle.
I just think that's a little sad that happens. That if we lose the hospital, who knows, maybe the register's next to go. Oh, I'm sorry, but
I'd be thrilled
We-
if they disappeared.
we could have had the front page too.
I can assure you that was read. I had no concept of how many people read the register from front to back until I ended up almost on the last page, and people have come up to me and said, that was wonderful.
Really? Well, I thought it was sad, I had to look for it.
Oh, come on.
Yeah.
Did you find it?
Eventually,
Okay.
I just thought this was the time to say it.
I think the sad thing is that it took letters to get that kind of attitude out there. Rather than somebody doing a reporting job rather than just
Well, it seems to me that sometimes no matter how well-intentioned reporters are on either side of an issue, the voice of the people is always what other folks need to hear. And the voice of this peninsula is being heard loud and clear.
Well, I also feel that Vera Brewer and Joe, I can never get his
Joe
last name, have both done fantastic articles about it.
Yes, they have.
And I've been very positive.
I would be hard pressed to criticize the Boothbay Register on their coverage of this issue. I think they've done a very fine job, and we are very fortunate they have taken this on and kept it in the news and kept it where it's been.
And they're very good about taking.
And with no disrespect intended, the news that Lincoln County Healthcare put out this week was kind of front page news. Oh, look, we've got this great idea. We think we'll take the critical access hospital status and we'll close your hospital, but we're gonna keep that status in our.
That was a
little
great
company.
idea.
It's brilliant. I mean, if, God bless them. I mean, I can understand why they're trying to do what they're doing. I don't quite understand how they're doing it.
But if it hadn't been for Patty Seabolt's letter on that subject, I think most of the public would have thought, oh, okay, that's how it's gonna work. So that's what I mean.
Marie?
I thought Stuart's letter was outstanding.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Outstanding, no question.
The part that was in there.
And they've been very helpful, the registry has been very helpful with us with the website.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, they've been a good part of this process, in an appropriate manner, I think.
Sometimes.
All right. Booth Bay Region Ambulance Service. Anything good to report, Scott?
Come right up here, Scott, don't be afraid, we won't bite.
My
Emerge from the darkness.
That's all right, I'll be on the same side. Basically, the ambulance service is anxiously waiting to see what the budget vote is going to be in the next week. That'll kind of drive what our next step is and how we move forward from here. The other thing is probably in the next month or so, just before we won't start the summer season, we're going to start a fundraising campaign. It's probably going to be a letter campaign this year. That way, more of the money is kept in-house of any funds we receive rather than have an outside agency help us. So the intention of that is to directly take care of what is left on the ambulance loan and to put that fourth ambulance equipped into service.
And then we talked about when you could vote on the critical access hospital referendum question. But I want to make sure that everybody knows that there's a difference in some instances on voting for the ambulance service question. So if you live in Booth Bay, both of those questions will be at the polls. So you'll get to go vote in private. But I think in Booth Bay Harbor, it's at the open floor. Is that correct?
As a question pertaining to the budget
The
line,
ambulance service? Yeah.
to the budget.
Yes.
Yes, that will just be included in the regular warrant on the town meeting floor.
Right, so if you live in Booth Bay Harbor and you go to vote on the critical access hospital question, make sure you go the next day and vote on the ambulance service budget.
Part of town meeting, and I wouldn't have known this 5 years ago, but having been there for the past few years, there is a small handful of people that go and they vote on millions of dollars that are spent. They get to approve the budget. That is what the town meeting is for. So the people who show up at town meeting on Saturday, May 4th for Booth Bay Harbor will be the ones who approve the budget that the budget committee and the selectmen have prepared and the town office has prepared for the next fiscal year. So you very much have a voice as to what gets approved and what goes through, and the ambulance service question is a listed item on the budget. So it's very interesting to see where your money goes.
I'm curious what the budget request is in each of the towns. In Southport, it was originally $45,000, I think, up from $8,000. And then there was that famous check passing in the parking lot.
Yes. Gladly taken?
Yeah.
Thank you.
But the consequence was that the budget question was changed from 45,000 to some smaller number to take into account the $25,000 received. So I'm curious whether the Booth Bay and Booth Bay Harbor, and for that matter Edgecombe, tax questions include the full amount for the $400,000 budget increase that's called for by the ambulance service, or is it decreased by the amount of the monies that have been forthcoming from Lincoln County Healthcare?
In the town of Booth Bay,
Yeah.
the question is for the full amount. The monies that Lincoln County Health has donated to the town will be going into the,
Put them in the general fund, and
Right.
then we'll use those general fund monies to offset the tax commitment.
Right. I understand. Do we know what's happening in the other towns?
In Booth Bay Harbor, it's the full amount.
It is.
So the question in Booth Bay will be to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $167,808 for ambulance services. So that's the question that will appear with a yes/no referendum.
I don't know the number off my head for Booth Bay Harbor. Do you
Yeah,
have it, Scott?
it's in the same range, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's too.
Proportionally, is more, I think.
a bit more. Any other questions? All right. Financial and fundraising.
I'll give you the same report that I have been given, but there is a mistake in the report that I give you. You can see I chicken scratch one line out. We put the $102,000 donation that's St. Andrews or Lincoln County Healthcare gave the town of Booth Bay in the wrong spot. So it shows up in this font, but it will be moved by first thing in the morning. So your numbers are off $102,000.
It's $102,000 among friends, come on.
But I can easily see why we made the mistake, because you don't often get handed a $102,000 check, and it was for.
Was that in the parking lot? Or?
I was gonna ask that.
I think it was about 5:30, 6 o'clock at night during the.
Yeah, in the dark.
Industrial Park Planning Committee.
Yes.
So the total balance, and you see the last credits that we have there, is that the second opinion fund has closed and donated that money to the St. Andrews Task Force. So that last entry, $10,369.27, that was just today. So the total balance of $21,670.50.
Question? Pam?
Do you know what you're gonna do with this money? Because I have a suggestion that couldn't we hire Julius to look into seeing whether we have a good cause here, either a yes or a no. It'll fly or it wouldn't fly. Or could they get an injunction to stop them from closing October 1st? Could we use that money for that? I'm sorry, Scott.
Can the task force use the money?
Yeah.
The task force, it's their fund, so yes.
Well, that's what I'm asking.
The
If the
answer is-
task force would look into something like that. I mean, if our lawyer, who he has been, comes up and said, gee, you don't have much of a chance. Or, yeah, you do have a chance. Or maybe we could get an injunction to stop them from closing, October 1st. I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. I just would like to see something on that idea. Go ahead.
Right, and Julius has shared his legal thoughts with the task force governing members. We've kind of kept that
Okay.
as attorney-client privilege.
Okay. I mean, isn't that what we collected money for, the lawyer and Advantage?
Yes.
Absolutely.
The ambulance.
Does he think we do have a case?
I mean, the position paper is pretty strong. And the position paper is the basis for the legal argument. So we think we've made a really strong legal argument, and with the assistance of the Attorney General, we think we have a very strong case. Without the assistance of the Attorney General, we think we have a very difficult case. One that could be very costly.
Can he get in
One
touch
that
with
would
the
be very
Attorney
costly.
General?
What's that?
Can he get in touch with the Attorney General and see what's happening there?
He has been in touch with the Attorney
He has.
General, as has the task force.
Tom?
This whole question of legal strategy is complex. The whole question is, to whom is the legal strategy addressed? And secondly, who is addressing it? And there are many combinations of circumstances. But as far as I know, except for letters that we've sent to the Attorney General, et cetera, there has been no formal complaint issued to the Attorney General with respect to the whole hospital question. So the Attorney General, for all practical purposes, has been getting letters from people, has been getting copies of articles that have appeared in the paper, et cetera, but has not been the recipient, as far as I know, of any formal complaint. And one of the things that could be done, and it would not cost a huge amount of money, is a drafting of a formal complaint to the Attorney General that asks for the Attorney General to look into the question of whether or not the law has been broken. The Attorney General is the highest placed police officer, if you like, in the state, and has in that capacity the ability to intercede, especially in instances where a corporation chartered by the state is not being operated in accordance with the articles of incorporation that he has filed with the state. And as far as my recollection is that that's what Julius concluded, is that somehow or other St. Andrews is being operated in a way that's not consistent with the articles of incorporation. And that is not something that needs to go to court. It doesn't have to be, there's no expensive trial that's needed. The Attorney General could simply intercede and insist that changes be made. Such a change could be, for example, the argument that it's not appropriate for Lincoln County Healthcare to be the only voting member of the corporation. That's one example. And meanwhile, we've got this whole hospital administrative district that's in train. We were talking about that earlier. That leads to a different set of circumstances under which if it passes and it gets established, we have a hospital administrative district and no hospital. Well, the Attorney General could, on her own, give the hospital to the hospital administrative district. I'm not advocating that. I'm saying that that's something she could do, and that could be done again without us spending a lot of money for a court trial. On the other hand, if they do close the hospital, my guess is there's some lawyer who's going to take a look at somewhere, I'm sure there's a class action attorney who's going to be looking at the possibility of filing a $200 million suit. The lawyer will take about a third of that $200 million. That's $60 million. So what's being dangled in front of the potential lawyers, if you like, the class action lawyers, once the hospital closes, is the possibility of a $60 million windfall that he would get for a suit that might cost him $1 million. So that's a long and complicated set of alternatives, but the important takeaway from it is it's not going to cost a significant amount of money to press legally to press the Attorney General to take action. That's not what has been talked about when it comes to, quote, a legal strategy.
Chuck, I, about a month and a half, 2 months ago, wrote an extensive letter to the Assistant Attorney General, who I understood was working with us. And I explained to her that in 1996, we signed the definitive agreement with the Lincoln County Healthcare, and that under the terms of that agreement, St. Andrews had to remain a full hospital unless and until the board of St. Andrews Hospital said that it was no longer needed in this region, and that thereafter we ceased having an independent board because our titular board of trustees was part of this 19-member board that was handling everything. And we didn't, there was no way that that board, being not independent, could possibly have voted that we didn't need a hospital anymore. I went into some extent length with her, and all I got for a response was, I have read your letter, thank you very much for your interest. Absolutely ridiculous, if you don't mind my saying so. So they've gotten that letter and they've chosen not to respond, basically.
Mike?
If I could address 2 points, moving back 10 minutes to Pam, with regard to getting an injunction to stop the closure of the hospital, the way the hospital licenses work, a hospital can get a license to have a hospital. A hospital can be, the license can be taken away so it can no longer have a hospital. But to my understanding, there's no way anybody in the state can make somebody be a hospital. I think it's nice if they could do it, but I don't believe it's possible. Second, to address what's going on with the AG's office, and I in no way intend to speak for that office, they are extremely tight-lipped. They don't talk about open investigations. I'm not surprised at all that, was it Tina that responded to you?
I think so, yeah.
That was her response. As far as filing a formal complaint, we essentially have. That office investigates information that they get. They could get it from a newspaper article, they could get it from a conversation on the street, they could get it from a formal complaint written by a lawyer. Their job is to enforce the law. This is the law we're talking about now is a set of laws having to do with charitable organizations, not-for-profit organizations. They are aware of the facts. That's what their job is to be aware of the facts. And whether or not they choose to take action on those is still pending. I would suggest that they would be very interested in the results of the votes at town meetings coming up next week. And I would be not surprised at all if they didn't say one syllable until after that. They'll get another 300 letters next Tuesday. So they know the will of the people. They know the intent of I believe they know the majority of the people here. They're extremely aware. There doesn't have to be a complaint filed per se. And again, we can rest assured that the information rests in good hands of that office.
And I also would like to put forward, when it comes to who is going to put forth lawsuits or get injunctions from the AG's office or whatever it might be, I think this task force is not the entity to have that happen, because it involves all 4 towns, and what we're looking to do is get this out to the people, where then that function can come from a more grassroots level, rather than having it coming directly.
But right now, you have the money.
Yes, we do. Yeah. Yeah, and at some point, that money's gonna go somewhere else.
Well, that's right.
In the very near future, isn't it?
Right.
Yeah.
That's why I brought it up now,
Yeah.
to see if something could be done before it gets all divvied out.
Yeah.
I can tell you that a formal request for relief has been submitted to the AG's office. But like Mike says, I wouldn't be surprised if the AG's office, even if they are very concerned about this issue, are not waiting for the ball to stop a little bit. There's constantly a press release about some new information about what Lincoln County Healthcare is doing with their services. And I wouldn't be surprised if it wasn't the AG's opinion to say, let's just wait until this starts to slow down before we get involved. Because once the AG gets involved, then the AG will not back out until there's a judgment.
A resolution.
Tom?
I wanted to ask about the effort on the part of LCH to change the status of, this jiggering of the CAH status. From booth pay up to, et cetera. In order to do that, they got to get the approval of people in the state and also in,
Well, both state and federal.
And federal.
Yeah. I mean, they're dancing.
yeah, and my
very
feeling
interesting
is
dance
that
right
it seems appropriate to me that we write some letters to those people as to counter whatever it is they're being told by Lincoln County Healthcare.
Yeah, I think it's important we find out who they are dealing with.
And
what
that was my
agencies
question. Do we have any
and
idea
what-
who they are and
what,
who the names
what
are?
people are having those discussions and where that goes. I will throw one thing out there, this is just coming strictly from me and nowhere else, that I thought of when I saw this thing about them wanting to take the critical access hospital and kind of use it as an umbrella over the entire process. If somehow they managed to do that, and then they did come October 1st, close our emergency room, I think you would at least then have a position to make an argument at some point in the future to reopen it, because it would still fall under a critical access hospital. So, come some period of time, if they did close it and we found out it was a total disaster and, you know, we're losing people left, right, and backwards because they're not getting to a hospital in time, you could bring some pressure to bear to have that reopened, and it would still fall under the access of that critical access hospital. So that's one of those things that, while it would be a loss in the short term, could be a win in the long term. And I haven't talked about that with anybody else, it's just something that popped into my little
You're right
keeper.
about that.
I did some minor research, and to be a critical access hospital, the hospital in question is supposed to be more than 35 miles away from another hospital unless the roads are crummy. Now,
It's the entire state of Maine.
well, some are crummy, are less crummy than others. And Midcoast and Penn Bay are both way within the 35-mile limit from the Miles building. And while Route 1 may not be terrific, it beats the heck out of the River Road.
But, I mean, I think it's
I don't
important.
see how they can possibly, without leaving something at St. Andrews.
I don't know how anybody can make a good faith argument, I mean, that this critical access designation, which came from St. Andrews, is suddenly going to fly over to Miles. I don't know how that's going to work. I can't imagine how
It's
they're
going
going
to
to
expand to, but what are they going to do about the 25-bed limit too?
Well, one of the things.
Well, they've talked about lowering the amount of
Yeah,
beds over.
cut the whole counties down to an allocation of
I mean,
25.
between the two hospitals, they'd have to cut to,
Well, this won't be a hospital anymore. remember?
well, this won't
But
be.
it has to be, because otherwise it won't be 35 miles.
One of the things that they don't have to do,
Yeah,
St. Andrews got their critical access designation by a governor's exemption.
Yeah,
but it wasn't nearly such a loud exemption as Route 1 and,
right.
Well, the thing is now, there are no governor's exemptions on the board. So they'd have to have a pretty valid argument to move the CAH designation from here to there and have it encompass all of Lincoln County.
I think, Chuck, what they want to do is to reorganize and combine the two into a single hospital with two campuses.
Sure, absolutely.
And in that way, scarf the critical access designation, and as.
Absolutely. I mean, if they can pull this off, I mean, you gotta kind of tip your hat to them. I mean, my
Yeah,
goodness. They're gonna have critical access hospital designation for the village, for Cove's Edge. They're gonna be making out like a bandit.
Yeah, and as you had said, you know, if we, you know, lose the emergency room but later reopen it, will still be one of the campuses of the hospital and still be under the critical access banner.
Exactly.
Mike?
Points just be made, the Monday after the Friday press release by Lincoln County Health, that Sunday night at 8 p.m., I got a phone call from St. Andrews Village inviting me to attend the presentation by Jim Donovan at St. Andrews Village, 9 a.m. the next morning. So 13 hours beforehand, I get invited, because I'm on the priority list, thankfully. Peggy went to this meeting, a few other folks. Jim Donovan said they've got Plan A and Plan B. Plan A is to seek to retain the critical access status and involve a merger. Miles would become part of St. Andrews. There would be no more Miles. He said that. There would be no more Miles. They'd both be known as St. Andrews. What they're trying to do is take the license and squish it across the river so it applies to both. He said, this is purely our attempt to maximize federal reimbursement. It does not change any of the service programs discussed for St. Andrews since last August. So there will be absolutely no change here. They're just taking the license, trying to make it apply to Miles. And if that doesn't work, they have Plan B, his words. Plan B is to create a new corporation. No name has been discussed for this new corporation. The outward visible names would remain, and no state or federal approval would be needed. But the intent of creating a new corporation would be to obtain the critical access status for the two hospitals. He also said that Miles and St. Andrews are the two most expensive hospitals in the state. Miles being number one, the highest expense, St. Andrews being number two. This merger would result, according to Jim Donovan, into a price reduction for patients of 15%. 15%. Now, if Miles is more expensive than St. Andrews, where's the savings coming from? Through the increased reimbursements given to Miles. When pressed, he said, well, it's $2 million, and actually $1 million of that is going to be due to cost reductions other than the increased reimbursements. They're counting on the demographics to remain about the same, lower utilization. When asked how this decision was made, this is what Jim Donovan said. He said, the discussions and decisions that were made the way Lincoln County Health makes its discussions and decisions. I wrote that right when he said it.
Does that mean behind closed doors?
I don't know. And he didn't elaborate. Beyond that, I draw your own. One question from the audience was, well, what about a giant disaster, like Hurricane Sandy hits our region? And something that I put together later and didn't process right away. He said snow and ice storms are the top of their planning list, very, very top, for calamities. Now, snow and ice are the top of their calamity planning list. What are they thinking about taking an ambulance from here to Damascata, the River Road or Route 27 and Route 1, if it's at the top of their list? He also said that the overhead has been reduced by $3.1 million as opposed to before the merger of the two. So essentially, if they can get greater reimbursement from the feds by doing this, Lord love them. However, nothing in this plan helps the residents of this peninsula.
No.
Other than, in his words, to be fair, he claims that they'll be able to reduce the overhead due to the merger. That's what he said on April 22nd.
And you get into Edge, we go top of the list, highest inflation.
Nobody else.
Nothing there.
Nobody else can. Yeah.
That's what he said, then.
Any other questions of Margaret?
I'm not sure where we are on the agenda.
We're still on the financial fundraiser.
Oh. Maybe I'll wait until other. I want to talk about some more legislation that we need to support. But I'll wait until later.
You sure?
It has to do with those of us who went to see the Attorney General were given a wonderful look at her life and where she's been, and she told us a story about when she was in the legislature and she tried to visit her hospital in her town to let them know about some legislation that was pending, and she was not allowed into the meeting because the meeting was private and nobody could come in, and she said, but I'm your legislator, and they didn't matter, and so they did let her in, and she gave them they gave her 5 minutes, she made a presentation, and they show her the door. So with that in her craw, she said, we're going to have some legislation, a bill or two this time, that's going to say that the public has a right to know what's going on in the board meetings of hospitals that take a lot of their funding from public sources. So there are 3 bills which have all been referred to the Judiciary Committee. Of course, the Attorney General can't put a bill in, so these are sponsored. Bruce McDonald is sponsoring one, and I can't give you the names of the other legislators, but they have a lot of support.
When are these coming forward?
And they are in committee, and the public hearing is on May 14th at 1 o'clock in the afternoon in the State House. And all of them are geared towards making hospital board meetings, bylaws, and minutes available to the public.
What a concept.
And the thing that I think is so important, Jane and I are going. I don't know how much room she has in her car, I'm just riding with her. But we're going to go and just make a brief statement about how this would have been wonderful given the experience that we have had. And if anybody else is interested in supporting this terrific idea that came from our wonderful Attorney General, who I hope is going to run for governor someday. Anyway, that's when it is. It's May 14th, 1 o'clock in the afternoon in Augusta in the State House. And these,
room 416.
well, it has to do with bylaws, it has to do with minutes of the meetings, and it also has to do with the fact that they will be required by law to make public the salaries they are paying the people who work for them. Those are the 3 pieces.
What committee again, Margaret?
I'm sorry?
Judiciary.
And they're being lumped in, all 3 bills are being heard by that committee at 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
Margaret,
Yes?
is that something that you can email people if you can't
Sure,
go?
I'll be
Can
happy to, so you can
Can you
read the
get
bill.
that email to anyone?
Actually, we could put it up on the website. too.
Jim's probably got it up right now.
LD 1118.
That's right.
An act to amend public access laws to improve accountability for public funds by making public the board meetings of hospitals receiving significant state funding.
As we learned from our last trip to Augusta, it's 1 o'clock or thereabouts.
It's 11:18, what are we on yet? 6:48? 6:84.
LD 684, an act to make bylaws and minutes of board meetings of publicly funded hospitals subject to the Freedom of Access Act. Is that when transparency of charges and expenses of hospitals?
Yes.
LD 1453, an act to increase the transparency of charges and expenses of hospitals that receive state funding.
Oh, that's one I didn't know about. When is that?
The same day.
No, this is insurance and financial services.
Okay, so when does that come up? Oh, I missed that one.
29.
So did you. That may not have gone to committee yet.
The last date on it is 4/25, and it says the bill referred to committee, so I don't think they have.
But there's another one, there's one more, but anyway, there are 3 of them that are coming before the Judiciary Committee on that day, on the 14th.
That's my attitude on the subject. Well, let's move on.
It's a lot of hospital bills.
Yes.
Hospitals and dinners. Should be that, rough stuff.
Next on the agenda, old business, final resolution.
We've distributed the final resolution, at least the draft
Yep.
of it electronically. Questions, comments, concerns, and
I've been, other than, I was pointed out to you the first time about Valerie's last name, I'm happy with it.
Got it.
Stu, I thought had some possible edits, or did you get those two?
I didn't get anything from Stu yet.
I thought it was wonderfully comprehensive, went much further than I had expected our final report to be, and it really is a testament to the amount of work that's been done in the last 8 months.
As well as Ed.
Yeah.
She watched, so she saw it.
Yeah. Have people in the audience heard it?
No.
I mean, I think it warrants being read. It's long.
I think we should do that at our final meeting. That's my thought. That's what I think we ought to end with. But that's my
Define
Yeah,
that
so-
of the-
Right.
Did we talk about what the point of it is?
Yes, we talked about the part of it.
Yes. Some people weren't far away in sunny beaches.
But some of us were very jealous.
So I think that's, I would recommend that exactly be, what we do read this in full at our next meeting, when we will officially bring the task force to an end. Because I propose that that's what we do at our next meeting.
But we don't bring the task force to it, we transition to a new life.
Well, yes, and we will do that.
I like using Nelson buzzwords.
But can we find out what the point of it is?
Oh, yeah, yes,
Well, we did. Go ahead.
we should recap,
We'll
So
recap.
this task force was formed in the beginning by the 4 towns as an agreement, an interlocal agreement, and each of us is a representative from the 4 boards. And we've been tasked to look into the issue of the closing of the emergency room. And I would say we effectively have looked into that issue. And so at this point, it's time for us to hang up our hats as official representatives from the 4 towns and give our report back to the individual boards of selectmen. So this resolution will be presented to each board of selectmen as, this is what I've been doing for the last 10 months, and this is our final report back to you. And one of the resolutions is that we continue on with the work with the Wellness Foundation, so that's included as a measure.
Any other questions? Any other under old business?
Let's do this under old business. If anybody that listens to Town Booth Bay has picked up their annual report yet, I wanted to point out the dedication. Besides dedicating our annual report to Todd Poland, who passed away on our board of assessment review, board of appeals, I'm sorry. We also dedicated the annual report to the St. Andrews Task Force volunteers. And I just wanted to read what we wrote in here, which I penned, and it's exactly what I think. So the 2012 annual town report is dedicated to the volunteers of the St. Andrews Task Force. Volunteers from the task force sacrificed hundreds of hours of personal time in an effort to investigate the service changes proposed at St. Andrews Hospital by Lincoln County Healthcare. They showed passion and determination that is unparalleled to any topic on the Booth Bay Peninsula in recent history. In July 2012, Lincoln County Healthcare announced the closing of St. Andrews Hospital emergency room and other valued services. A majority of the population was shocked and turned to the local leaders in the area for answers. Without the answers that the residents coveted, the town of Booth Bay led an effort to organize the growing concerns and questions. After a joint selectmen's meeting between the towns of Edgecombe, Southport, Booth Bay Harbor, and Booth Bay, a need for action was apparent. The crowd in the Booth Bay Region Elementary School last August cheered when the 4 towns agreed to form a task force to investigate. The 4 towns agreed by interlocal agreement to put together a representative from each town. Valerie Augustine, Booth Bay Harbor, Smith Kleino, Southport, Stuart Smith, Edgecombe, and Chuck Cunningham, Booth Bay, quickly brought leadership and structure to the effort. They started meeting regularly, collecting and disseminating information and updating the public. The unexpected happened. Volunteers from all ages, backgrounds, and skill sets started attending meetings and contributing their skills. Doctors, nurses, hospital administrators, lawyers, professors, accountants started to offer their skills to the efforts. They worked hand in hand with fishermen, hairdressers, retirees, and other residents in a combined effort. Summer residents from all over the country worked with generational residents deep-rooted in the region. Edgecombe, Southport, Booth Bay, and Booth Bay Harbor residents all worked together in unison. It was historic. And they all worked. They generated data, they formed petitions, they raised their own money, they hired their own lawyer, they commissioned their own study, they developed their own website and created a unified voice. With this dedication, while this dedication is written, the rally continues and the victories have been documented, but this dedication is to recognize the unity and effort of one community with a common goal and the personal sacrifice they have donated. So that's our thank you to everybody that has volunteered.
And that's a thank you to all you people. Thank you.
You got a whole bunch of women crying.
That is all.
New business. The next meeting will be next Tuesday.
5/7.
I would propose at that time that we will bring this final resolution to a final resolution, and we will present it as such, and that at that moment, we will propose that the task force will end, and we will hand the reins on to the Booth Bay Region Health and Wellness Foundation.
Do we have a split meeting? Because next Tuesday will be when the organizational meeting is for the foundation.
Well, I would recommend we meet at 6 next week instead of 7, and we can do our thing, and then thereafter they can do their thing.
Well, what I'm thinking is we hand it off after the organizational meeting so that there's a structure in place to hand it off.
We can meet at 6.
We'll
meet down. Charles will let us have it.
You guys meet at 6, and we will meet at 7.
Yeah, we can do it. Could we use the word transition rather than ending?
Yes.
How about more?
More.
Okay.
I would also add that we will at that time disperse the funds.
The funds will be dispersed.
It should be stated in our final resolution, exactly.
Yeah.
And the final resolution is not secret, it's just not public. Where it's a draft and some of the language is really strong, it's probably best delivered in one whole presentation, rather than as we change a word or find a phrase that works better, then it just doesn't have the same effect.
You understand that?
If it's not going to be ready until Tuesday, can I still make the register on Thursday?
We can make sure the register has a copy of it.
Any other new business? Public comment?
We've got a plan for our reunion dinner.
We'll work on that. We'll work on that. We got ideas.
Margaret, we don't need a reunion dinner because none of us are going anywhere.
She didn't say potluck dinner, thank God.
We're working on it.
Motion to adjourn?
Move we adjourn, sir.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you again, everyone.